everyone! So today I am bringing you the first part of my March reviews. I did read 12 books and 2 plays in March, so I am splitting it up into 2 so I can give a little bit more individual attention on the books. So I have my first selection, which includes the 2 plays. So the first book I read in March was The Enchanted by Renee Denfeld. Sorry, I always feel like there should be an extra E in there. This is my booktube recommends from Taylor. I enjoyed this. I thought it was really engrossing and really well written. I read it in about a night, but the story, it was weird. I don't know how else to describe this. And to be fair, I read this like the first day of March, so it's been a whole month. This takes place in a prison, and it basically deals with death row inmates and this woman who tries to collect evidence to get people for lawyers off of the death penalty. So it deals with pretty reprehensible humans. You don't really know who the narrator is until the very end. It's interesting. It kind of gives you somewhat sympathize a bit with the narrator, even though you know he's on death row for a reason. You just don't know why. And it also follows the woman who's never actually named, but the one who is going around trying to find evidence to get these inmates off of death row. And it's quite interesting. I wouldn't say I loved it. It's definitely not my normal type of fiction that I read, but it was good. This was everywhere a couple years ago. I have this edition, which is okay, but they had really nice ones with like gilded horses on the edge and the decal, like on the cover, and deckled edges. And unfortunately those are no longer available, but it's definitely interesting. I did enjoy it. It took a really harsh look at prison lifestyle. That is not the Orange is the New Black style of prison. So yeah, it was definitely interesting, but I don't know whether or not I'm eager to read anything like this anytime soon. So next up in the month that I read was Bleak House by Charles Dickens, and this is my favorite book that I read this month, or last month I guess. It's now April. I actually powered through this in like 4 days, and I don't really know how. I read over 500 words in like 4 hours. I don't understand how I did this. I was talking to Ange and Yamini when I was doing this, because I bet he read this with them, and they're like, I was like, I don't know how I'm doing this, but it's just so good and I can't put it down. Bleak House is fantastic. I'm thinking I'm going to be doing a full review on it, so I'm not going to talk too much about it. It isn't kind of, I can see this book being really hard to get into because there are a lot of characters, there's a lot of strands of plot, and they don't seem to connect, especially at first. The central focus of this book is the Jarndyce and Jarndyce case, in which all the plot points revolve around, and you just kind of have to stick with it. There are a lot of characters, and you're like, I don't understand why you're in this, but it all makes sense in the end. They all have a plot to play. Dickens is really good at that. It is also a dual narrative, so you get kind of a third-person narrative as well as the narration of Esther. I think her name's Esther. Yes, Esther for some reason keep wanting to call her something else, but her name is Esther. And I found her chapters to be the most engaging, though they were few and far between. But I really enjoyed this. This filled me with love for Charles Dickens. I just fell in love with it. Next up, I decided to read one of my Melville Publishing House novellas, which I haven't been reading these mostly because they're on my bookshelf. They're kind of behind my Penguin Black Spine, so I don't see them a lot, so I don't think to read them. And this is First Love by Ivan Turgenev, possibly mispronouncing that, Russian author. This was a really interesting novella. I really enjoyed it. I got through it fairly quickly. This deals with the story of a young man, and he's at his family's country house, and he falls in love with the neighbor who's kind of not, you know, the best society, but it was really interesting and quite touching. Very, not affected, but it was quite an sad but interesting story. And it was nice to kind of get back into some Russian literature. I find it a little, it's always hard to find good translations of Russian literature just because people just don't translate stuff. Translated fiction is always hard to find. I don't know if anybody else has this problem. Especially for me reading like Quebec fiction. I want to read more Quebec fiction, but only 1% of the fiction that is put out in French in Quebec is translated in a year or something crazy like that. I remember a professor telling me that, and I was like, it's in the same country, we can't read it. It's just not accessible to English language speakers. But yes, it was nice to read a Russian story. So next up, I read The Dud Avocado by Elaine Dundee, which this was gifted to me at Christmas time by Nicola from Robotnik. And this was, I don't know, Nicola's reading it right now, and we've been talking about it with a couple other people, and we're all just kind of like, it's just okay, like it's not anything special. I was kind of disappointed with this one. It talks about a young girl in Paris, and she's kind of rebelling against society, and it's just very meh. Like, it's, yeah, there's not much to say about this. Like, it's kind of one of those Evelyn Waugh, Nancy Mitford style books, and I can't say I love it. You know, that's just all I have to say about it. I can't say I love it. I wouldn't recommend it. Next up, I read another of the novellas, and that is The Nose by Nikolai Gogol. This was weird. Weird. It's about a man who loses his nose, and the nose takes on a life of its own, and it becomes a public figure, and it's this strange little novel, and it's only like 50 pages, I think. Let me see. Yeah, it's 50 pages, so it's quite quick to get through. If you're interested in kind of like weird surrealist fiction, I would recommend this. I did enjoy it. Like, I think I gave it 3 stars or something like that. Yeah, it's really funny, and it basically deals with the main character trying to get his nose back and trying to convince his nose that it belongs on his face, and meanwhile the nose now outranks him in Russian society, and it's very strange and very weird. But yes. So last up for this batch of reviews, I read 2 plays by Euripides. I have this lovely volume which has a collection of 4 plays, and it's put out by, I think it's the University of Chicago Press, and I have read previously The Bacchae and Iphigenia and Alice. I read Iphigenia and Alice in school, and I read The Bacchae with Jean in December as part of like the classical read-along. And so I read this time The Cyclops and Rheseus. The Cyclops basically deals with the portion of the Odyssey where I want to say Ulysses because that's the Latin translation, but Odysseus is stuck on the island with the Cyclops, and it was funny. Like, it was definitely more humorous. It is the only satyr play in existence that we have still from ancient times, because ancient plays were produced. You would get 3 tragedies and then a more comedic satyr play after, and it is the only existing example we have of a satyr play. So that was quite interesting. And then I read Rheseus, which is actually kind of contested as to whether or not it should be attributed to Euripides or not, but it's put in this volume, and it deals again with the Troy saga, and it deals with the king of, I forget which country, but it's basically, it's Troy. It was interesting because I've read the Iliad and the Odyssey, and so I knew what was going on, and these are kind of like adding on to that Troy saga, but they weren't parts of the Troy saga that I'm particularly interested in. I much preferred like homecoming stories, so I enjoyed the Cyclops much more than Rheseus. I find the homecoming stories really, really interesting. If you're looking for, you know, some great like plays, I really enjoy Aeschylus's The Agamemnon. Fantastic. So these were just okay. I mostly just wanted to read them because I wanted to buy another volume of these, and I set myself the rule that I couldn't buy another volume unless I had finished one. So now I'm just debating about which volume to get. They have 5 of these, and they have all of Euripides' plays collected. They also have ones for Aeschylus, and they have ones for Sophocles. So I really like these, and these are really well translated. These were recommended to me by one of my classics profs, so I can vouch for the translation there. So that is the first part of the books that I read for March. I will be doing the next part next week, and I will see you guys in another video. Bye!